Alright, Maras, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 1 of Pros and Cons, where I talk about all the positives and all the negatives from Sunderland's most recent game in the league, in the cup, in the Europa League, whatever it may be. I'll be discussing it, trying to find the positives in what will be probably a lot of negative performances based on what we saw on Saturday. But I have managed to compile a list here of some actual positives from the game against Ipswich. For those who don't know, we lost the game 2-1 to a 90th minute Jack Clark dagger, which I've made a video on TikTok just talking about how scripted it felt, but we didn't really deserve to win the game, but I have managed to get some positives, and to be totally honest, I think there's enough positives in this game that I think if we'd have gotten away with a draw in that game, I wouldn't feel that disheartened at all. But that dagger from Clark it's just ruined everything. But let's get in and start off with the positives. I've managed to find some, I know, somehow. But let's get straight into it. We'll talk about the players that I thought deserves a positive mention. Starting off with my personal man of the match in a Sunderland shirt, Thomas Munier. By a country mile. What a player we have on our hands here. A 34-year-old free agent right back. I think a lot of people have kind of not wrote off this signing, but just not really give it the praise that it deserves. This is a player who was given a team of the season spot last season in the French League. A player who's played Champions League football the majority of his career, coming in with so much experience. And I think just because of his age, people have kind of not taken this signing seriously enough. And in my opinion, he was the best player in a Sunderland shirt on Saturday. It looked like he dropped down a level to play in the Premier League. And considering it's the hardest league in the world, that just goes to show how easy it looked for him. It looked like he played the entire game in second gear, yet was still the best player on the pitch. And for a 34-year-old, he covered the most distance on the entire pitch, which is just absolutely brilliant. Leading by example for them younger players, especially the majority of the younger players on the pitch on Saturday, who were just so negative and felt like they weren't doing enough. Thomas Munier was absolutely sensational. I love when he took a pop shot from it was sort of outside the box at the far right corner. He shot when he had absolutely no right to, and normally I'd be fuming at that, but when the team was creating nothing, I almost love to see someone trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck, trying to make something happen. And Thomas Munier tried to do that with a random shot. He did slightly test the keeper. And this was proven in his interview after the match when he was said, the interviewer said, look, we created a lot of chances, we just couldn't score. And he went, no, we weren't creating enough chances. We were doing nothing. And that's why he went on and did that really weird shot, which I know it's a really strange thing to pick out as a positive, but I just love to see that sometimes. And nothing's happening. I love to see people making stuff happen, even if nothing comes of it. At least someone's trying. He ended up getting 2 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 3 recoveries. He was my man of the match in a Sunderland shirt on Saturday, by a mile as well. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. We could be onto a serious talent in Thomas Munier. Ignoring his age, he was absolutely brilliant on Saturday. And then the other player who I do feel comfortable talking about positively is Noah Siddiqui, someone who I really ran out of superlatives that I could describe him with last season due to how good he was. And to be honest, I'm so surprised that he hasn't been flirted with in terms of getting a move away at one of the bigger clubs, because he was so good last season. And I thought he was brilliant on Saturday. Like I've said before, talking about this game, we were really negative, struggling to make things happen all game at Portman Road. And I thought Noah Siddiqui was an anomaly of that. I think every time he picked up the ball from the defenders, he took it on the half turn, turned, tried to take a man on, tried to take a pass, even just driving forward, tried to bring the rest of the team up for him. I thought he did that every single time. He had 4 out of 5 successful dribbles, the joint most successful dribbles in the entire match. And for a defensive midfielder to be able to do that just goes to show how he really needed to try and make something happen all on his own. He was really let down by Lafay and Jacara, I think, on Saturday. I thought not only was he trying to make something happen, he was doing it successfully. He had 100% success rate on accurate long balls and accurate crosses. When no one else was even playing any kind of long balls, through balls, line cutting passes, felt like everyone was just going side to side and backwards, mainly Granit Xhaka being the main culprit for it. And Noah Siddiqui was orchestrating absolutely everything that was positive on Saturday, but unfortunately, with him being the only one who was doing that, it came to nothing. It came to absolutely nothing. But I thought Noah Siddiqui does have a shout for being man of the match on Saturday, but I do think that Thomas Munier was just a little bit better. But Noah Siddiqui, man, what a player. If he plays like anything like that for the rest of the season, he's off to one of the big lads for 100 million, without a shadow of a doubt, in my personal opinion. But that's the final sort of positive I can talk about in terms of individual performances. The last 2 things I've got wrote down on my very short list of positives is I thought we were really good playing out the tight spaces of parts, especially on the byline under pressure or at the back under pressure. I thought a lot of the one-touch quick passing and moving into spaces I thought was really positive, something that I really do hope we take on to the rest of the season, because I don't think I saw that much of that last season, but I thought we were really good at doing it this against Ipswich on Saturday, mainly through Enzo Lafay's quick passes in a few fancy flicks, but I thought he tried to be a bit too clever sometimes, and it weren't like he was trying to make something happen, and it was like a lot of passes which could have been simple, and he was just like backheeling at Ronaldo, chopping it and stuff, which was really positive when the game was still on a knife's edge. But League going away with a loss, I didn't think it was enough. But I do think there was a lot of positives to take from that sort of quick passing in the tight spaces. And the final thing I've got wrote down is Angulo's goal. It was an absolutely brilliant goal. I mean, I don't think I've scored directly from a free kick since Alex Pritchard in the League One days, which just goes to show the lack of free kick takers we've had over the last few years. It was a great goal, and although I do also have him wrote down on my negatives list, I thought Angulo digging us out and getting a great goal just before half time should have been a foundation to build on and go and win the football match. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but I would have been able to easily forgive Angulo's poor performance if this goal did lead to a win, but unfortunately it didn't. And that is the last positive that I can talk about, and I've scrambled and really tried my hardest to bring out some positives there, but some of these are stabs in the dark because we weren't great on Saturday, Peter. We weren't great, but that's all the positives that I've got to talk about, and unfortunately I'll be moving on to the negatives now, which is a much longer list, but that is what happens when you go away and lose to a newly promoted side. It does tend to be negative. And now for the negatives, the long list. I know, it's so disappointing to start the season off this way, and I want to make it very clear that I've tried to be positive here, but unfortunately it was all around quite a poor performance and obviously a really poor result at the end of the day, so I'm going to have to highlight a lot of negatives because that is simply what happened. I'm going to start off with what, in my opinion, was potentially the most negative thing. I thought both central defenders were absolutely miles off the mark on Saturday. Luke O'Nien and Dan Ballard. Honestly, I was surprised to see Luke O'Nien starting on Saturday, but I wasn't worried about it. I think he's proven himself more than enough now that he's good enough to play in the Premier League, but he was just way off it. I thought that he just looked like someone who was lost. He looked like a headless chicken at some point, and he just gave the ball away too much. Obviously, one error leading directly to their first goal was all through Luke O'Nien, and he also got let off by giving the ball away later on in the game where he ended up dragging the forward down and getting a yellow card. I just thought he looked absolutely miles off it. He won 2 out of 6 of his ground duels and had 1 error leading to goal, and for a central defender, that is recipe for a disaster, people. And Luke O'Nien is this does happen with Luke O'Nien quite a lot, but like I said, he'll probably go and be man of the match next week on Sunday against Fulham if he does get the chance to start, but he was miles off it, and I think maybe his negative performance ended up dragging Dan Ballard, his partner, down with him. I thought Dan Ballard also looked miles off it. He looked like he'd never played at the level before. He was diving into challenges, running after people. He just looked... I just don't even know what the best way to describe it is. He just looked like a headless chicken, similar to the way I described Luke O'Nien. He only won 3 out of 6 of his ground duels and 3 out of 9 of his aerial duels. And for an absolute brick shit house like Dan Ballard, who's proven time and time again that he can be that unit in the box that will get rid of absolutely everything, who will body off the attacker under any circumstance, to drop stats like that and a performance like that is so negative. And almost 9 times out of 10, when your 2 centre-backs are playing that bad and causing that many issues, you're going to lose the match because defence is just too important, and when we aren't attacking well enough, you're relying on your defence to keep you in the game to try and get the result, and when the defenders weren't doing that, it led to an absolute disaster, and that's why we had an error lead. Well, both were errors leading to goal. I don't have Alderete directly wrote down, but he did give the ball away for the second goal as well, the winner for Jack Clark. It was such a disappointing defensive performance. I know I highlighted Mounier as being good, but he was the only shine in that defence. The central defenders for the whole 90 minutes were absolutely miles off it, and both of them got yellowed as well. It was so disappointing. I really hope that Mookie Elliott or Alderete do start on Sunday against Fulham, because someone needs to steady the ship, because them two looked absolutely miles off it on Saturday. It really was, and it was so disappointing to see, and I think them two ultimately cost us the entire football match. It's disappointing. It's disappointing. The next thing I've got wrote down, now I'll read it out exactly how I've got it wrote down. Xhaka on a whole. Xhaka on a whole for the entire 90 minutes was such a negative performance. Absolutely everything. A player who, despite how good he was and how important he was last season, I think comes into this season with something to prove due to the fiasco that went on with the move to Chelsea. I think a lot of fans, including myself, are sort of waiting to see what happens, because I still don't feel comfortable with him being my captain, where it looked like he was trying to force his way out of the club, and it only ended up coming out that he didn't want to go when the deal fell through. I don't know, that's a whole other thing in itself, but I think he had something to prove, and to come into this first game being so passive in the defensive midfield position, always going side to side or backwards, when we really needed someone like him, and he did it so many times last season. When we were struggling, he would bring us up, and I thought he actually brought us down on Saturday, which is, it's awful to see for someone who's so important at the football club, but I can't think of one positive that Granit Xhaka had on Saturday, and when he's our main man, it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch, and he looked miles off at a part. He didn't look interested, and like I said, with the situation that went on in the summer, he needs to be careful, because I think a lot of fans, if there's another negative performance or two from Xhaka in that midfield, they'll be straight on his back. They really will, and rightly so, because like I said, I think he was dying to leave the club under if he could have, but obviously it didn't go his way because we were stubborn, and thank God that we were. But I really hope that he answers them sort of questions on Sunday, because Xhaka was awful, man. And I know I was wanting to jump on. It looked very rage baity when I had to go at him on TikTok, but I was so disappointed the way that this Chelsea situation occurred, and I think a lot of Sunderland fans are, and a performance not building up and sort of, correcting those bad things that he did in the summer. It's awful to see, and I thought Xhaka was one of the main issues on Saturday against Ipswich. I think the wingers didn't have a game plan, and I think that's something that has been the case a long time for Reggie Lebreson, especially since getting it into the Premier League. It's not like one of them's inverting and one of them's going out inside. It's like, either, I don't actually know, like, at the end of the day, I'm not a manager, right? But when the wingers, either they're not inverting all the time, they're not going on the outside all the time, they're not trying to cross it, they're just doing a whole load of nothing. I just don't really know what their game plan is. I don't know what their instructions are. I don't know if they're trying to invert. I don't know if they are trying to be sort of crossing it. And when Brian Brobby was so good in the World Cup getting on the end of crosses, to have only one successful cross between both wingers in Angulo and Hume is awful. It's absolutely awful. And if they're not doing them crosses, you expect them to be cutting in, taking shots and creating stuff. And no, Angulo scored a goal, but that weren't as a result of him playing well on the wing. He got a free kick and scored an absolutely brilliant goal. I just feel like our wingers don't have a plan. And I don't know if that's from Reggie or maybe they're just not good enough. I don't know. Obviously, we're looking to bring in a star-studded right winger, potentially in Jenny Catamo from Sporting Lisbon. But I just think the wingers didn't have any kind of idea what they're doing. And sometimes that can be quite common for us, especially under Reggie. And I think the fact that Talby weren't starting surprised me. I know Angulo was great at the World Cup, but even then again, when Talby came on, he looked miles off it as well. I just think our wingers look void of ideas. And in all fairness, I feel like I'm justified to cut some slack for Trey Hume because he is a right back. He's one of the most defensive-minded right backs I've ever seen. So I don't know what the experiment with turning him into a right winger is. I really don't understand it, but I'm not going to be too harsh on him because, like I said, he's a right back. But I would be changing both wingers on Sunday against Fulham, bringing in Talby to start on the left and put Tarby or Rig on the right, because Hume's not a right winger, people. He's just simply not a right winger, and I just don't know why this experiment keeps carrying on. Another player who had a really disappointing performance, someone who stepped up and was the big man on many occasions last season, Brian Brobby. Brian Brobby was miles off, and I think a lot of it was due to the fact that we weren't involving him in the game enough, so I can only give him so much stick, but he did only have 10 touches of the football in the entire match, resulting in 2 shots, neither of which really came to anything. He lost every single ground duel. Every single ground duel that he was a part of, Brian Brobby lost, and I've labelled him as one of the best, if not the best hold-up striker in world football due to how strong he is, how good he is at holding off a man, quickly turning and getting a shot off or laying off a winger. He did none of that on Saturday, and I thought he really just weren't shooting enough. Like I said, I mean, he only got 10 touches of the ball, but I think half of them could have turned into shots very easily, and he was just trying too much to hold off that defender, wait for the pass, or wait for the perfect opportunity to shoot. And when we're struggling for any kind of creativity, any kind of chances in a game, you want your striker to just shoot. I don't care if it flies over the bar, I don't care if it doesn't test the keeper. I want to see me striker trying stuff, and Brian Brobby was doing none of that on Saturday, and he never really looked like scoring. I thought Isidore was so much more positive when he came on, and I wouldn't have been surprised that if Isidore was starting from the first minute, he might have scored or at least had a big chance, which Brian Brobby had none of, and that's so disappointing. A player who he's potentially my favourite player at the club, man. He's absolutely sensational. Like I said, I've just labelled him as nearly one of the best in his role in world football, and yet he couldn't do it on a Saturday afternoon in East Anglia against Ipswich, and it was so disappointing. But to summarise the negatives of Saturday's performance against Ipswich, the 2-1 loss was just too negative. It was way too negative. We didn't create anywhere near enough. No one was trying to grab the green by the scruff of the neck. Well, I've labelled 2 players who tried their hardest to do so, but no one really did it. And I really think that, I mean, if we play like that, I think obviously we probably would get away. We're getting some results against some other teams. Obviously, I'm not seeing Ipswich are a great side, but with us conceding so late on, I think 9 times out of 10 we probably do get away with a draw there. But at the end of the day, we've started the season off for a loss, and I think it is all due to the performance. It's not like we were unlucky. We didn't create anywhere near enough. I think a draw would have been a fair result, but us going away with a loss doesn't feel unfair on us either. It's such an awkward way at the start of the season. Everyone's so excited. Win the Europa League, man. Less than a month till our first Europa League game. But when you lose to a newly promoted side on the first game of the season, it's awful. It is awful. But at the end of the day, I'm not panicking. I think any Sunderland fan who is panicking right now needs to just take a look at themselves. We lost our first away game last season to a newly promoted side, and finish 7th, for goodness sake. I do think there is quite a little bit of pressure to answer those questions on Sunday against Fulham, another game where we're expected to get all 3 points in it. With our home form being so important last season and struggling on the road, it looks like that potentially might already be starting again this season. So I think we really do need to bounce back with a good performance and a win on Sunday. Otherwise, people could start to get worried. And I know that's so early, but that's just the way the Sunderland fans always are. We expect a lot, and that's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, we can just live and learn. It's not that bad, but there was a lot of negatives to be talked about for Saturday's performance against Ipswich. Fair play to any Ipswich fans who are watching this. I think a win is like, we didn't deserve to draw, really. I think I don't know. I'm disappointed. But please, show your support on the channel. This is a new series that, like I said, I will be doing for every single game. Any support, because it's a new channel, it goes so far. The comments are an open discussion. Please speak to us, drop your comments, what you thought of the game. I'll speak to absolutely every single one of you. I'll respond to every single comment. If you haven't already, subscribed if you like what you've seen. I really like to think that my videos here over on YouTube are a lot less rage baity, because that's why I've created a lot longer form content. And please drop a like if you did enjoy the video. But yeah, wasn't a great result on Saturday, was it, Peter? But let's just bounce back on Sunday. Away the lads!